For 80 years, a German submarine sat in silence off the American coast, erased from history, absent from records, and never meant to be found. When divers finally reached it, they expected a wreck. Instead, they uncovered a question no one could answer.
But we're uncovering a much bigger mystery here.
And in 2025, they opened a sealed compartment that proved this was never just a lost submarine, it was a hidden mission.
I'm more convinced now, more than ever, that these subs are here.
There's an argument that it could be a lot more catastrophic.
The wreck that should not exist. The first divers were not chasing fame or treasure. They were only chasing rumors that grew louder with every retelling. Fishermen spoke of strange things snagging their nets in waters where nothing should have been. Trawlers returned with torn nets and broken equipment, claiming they had hit metal objects that did not belong to any known shipwreck. These rumors were dismissed by many, but to John Chatterton and Richie Kohler, they were impossible to ignore. So, in the summer of 1991, they descended into the cold Atlantic waters off the coast of New Jersey to find out if the rumors were true or not. From the moment their dive lights pierced the darkness, they knew they had reached something that was never supposed to be there.
A really wonderful experience to see, life goes on and him following in a good way in his father's footsteps.
The ocean floor had been empty during their descent, showing only drifting silt and scattered debris, until their lights suddenly exposed a massive solid shape rising from the darkness ahead. The shape did not appear all at once. First came a smooth steel curve, then a long, rigid spine, and finally the unmistakable outline of a pressure hull stretching into the black water. As their lights traveled along its surface, the truth became unavoidable. They were staring at a submarine.
Obviously, as time went by, we ultimately identified the submarine. They were there, they captured this, and it became an award-winning, Emmy-winning documentary known as Hitler's Lost Sub.
The closer they moved, the heavier the moment became. Their gloved hands brushed against cold steel that had not felt human touch in decades. The hull was scarred but intact, preserved by darkness and depth. Rivets, vents, and fittings emerged from the shadows one by one, each detail confirming what their instincts already feared and hoped at the same time. This vessel was German. There was no flag attached to the hull and no visible number that could identify the vessel. No official record existed that explained why it was resting in this location. Despite that absence of documentation, the design of the submarine left no room for doubt. This was a Nazi U-boat. Shock rippled through both divers. According to American and German records, no Nazi submarine was ever lost in these waters. Patrol logs and battle reports recorded nothing. There had been no torpedo attacks, no depth charge explosions, no distress calls. The ocean floor should have been empty, but it was not. The submarine sat there as though it had been waiting for them to find it. The depth made every part of the mission dangerous.
We had a fatality, and I can't say it really was unexpected, because we've had fatalities deep diving before on other deep wrecks like the U-boat.
At 230 feet, their bodies were constantly pushed to the edge of safe limits. The pressure strained their equipment and their lungs. Their air supply vanished faster than they wanted to admit. Each dive allowed only a short window to observe, record, and retreat. One mistake could trap them in a place no rescue team could reach in time. Still, John Chatterton and Richie Kohler returned again and again. They moved slowly along the torpedo tubes, then into the control room, carefully shining their lights across every surface. They searched for hull numbers, nameplates, insignia, or any marking that could identify the submarine. Each dive produced more images, more measurements, and more confusion. The vessel clearly followed German engineering, but it carried no identifying number. Eventually, the mission reached a hard limit. The wreck was too deep, too fragile, and too dangerous to fully penetrate without risking collapse or fatal decompression errors. That failure gave the wreck its permanent identity. divers began calling it U-Hoo because no one could answer the most basic question of all. Which U-boat was it? The nickname spread quickly through the diving community. Speculation followed. Some believed it had been sunk by American forces and quietly removed from official records to hide a friendly fire mistake. Others believed it had been sent on a classified mission that was never logged. A few questioned whether it was German at all, suggesting it might have been a captured submarine modified and redeployed under false identity. Every theory collapsed under investigation. No battle record matched the wreck. No missing U-boat fit its location. No document explained its presence. It seemed as if the vessel had simply vanished into the ocean, carrying its secrets into the cold dark. And the ocean wasn't ready to give any of those secrets away without taking lives. The price of curiosity. The first death hit the diving community hard. Steve Feldman was skilled and careful. He had years of experience in deep water. In September 1992, 1 year after the wreck's discovery, he descended to the wreck expecting a routine dive. But at some point during the dive, something failed. It may have been his air system. It may have been his line. It may have been a moment of confusion brought on by depth and pressure. What mattered was that communication stopped. Below the surface, alone in the dark, Feldman ran out of options. He never made it back up alive. By the time his body was recovered, the wreck had already claimed its first life. No one could say exactly what happened. The ocean kept that answer. The loss sent shock through the community. It was a warning that could not be ignored. Some divers walked away after that. They understood what the wreck was capable of. But others felt pulled in even closer. Only weeks later, disaster struck again, this time with even greater force. Chris Rouse and his son Chris Jr. were well known and respected. They were a father and son who trusted each other completely underwater. They planned their dive carefully and entered the water together. Something went wrong during their descent or ascent. They believed they were facing an emergency. Fear took over. They rose too fast from the depth, desperate to reach the surface. But their bodies could not handle the sudden change. Gases trapped in their blood expanded violently. Decompression sickness hit hard and fast. There was nothing anyone could do. Both father and son died shortly after reaching the surface. For John Chatterton and Richie Kohler, those deaths changed everything. The wreck was no longer just a puzzle or a challenge. It carried weight. People had died trying to understand it. Walking away now would mean accepting that those deaths meant nothing. That was not something they could live with. Their dives became more careful and more intense afterward. Every moment inside the wreck carried fear, anger, and grief. They photographed everything. They recorded every mark, every break, every sign of damage. They argued over details late into the night, driven by exhaustion and pressure. Both men knew the truth waiting inside the submarine was human. German sailors who had gone to sea and never returned died there. Their names had been erased, but the question would not leave them alone. Who were these men, and why did they die here? The answer would not come from something dramatic or obvious. It would begin with something small. A name surfaces from the dark. During one of John Chatterton and Richie Kohler's most dangerous dives, while moving carefully through the cramped and damaged interior of the submarine, their lights caught something resting among the scattered debris.
Divers have made quite a discovery off Nantucket Island in Massachusetts, the wreck of a German U-boat.
It was a knife. At first it looked ordinary. German submarines carried many identical knives. They were tools, not valuables. This one was worn and corroded from decades underwater. Still, Chatterton and Kohler brought it up because it was intact. Once cleaned, something unexpected appeared. A name had been carved into the handle. It was not decorative, it was rough and personal. The name was Horenberg. For the first time, the wreck had a human voice. Back on land, the mood changed completely. Chatterton and Kohler moved from dive planning to research with the same intensity. They searched naval archives and wartime records. They studied crew lists and service logs. The name was not common, which helped. After weeks of work, a match appeared, Martin Horenberg. He was a machinist's mate in the German Navy. His assignment was clear. He served aboard U-869. That discovery hit hard. This was no longer a theory pulled from wreck shapes or metal fittings. This was a man who had lived, worked, and died inside a submarine. For the first time, the wreck felt personal. Still, the pushback came fast. Critics were quick to dismiss the find. They argued that personal items could move between wrecks. They pointed to ocean currents and past salvage operations. A knife, they said, was not proof. The identification remained disputed. The wreck was still officially unnamed. Chatterton and Kohler did not stop. They returned to the wreck with renewed pressure and renewed fear. The dives were just as dangerous as before, but now they carried a heavier purpose. They searched deeper into areas that were harder to reach and more unstable. In 1997, during one of the most dangerous dives yet, they entered the engine room. The space was cramped and damaged. Heavy machinery lay twisted and broken. While searching behind fallen metal, they found a small container wedged in place. It took effort and time to free it. Inside was a spare parts box. The box was badly corroded, but it was still intact. When it was opened on the surface, something critical was found. A serial number was stamped into the metal lining. This was not personal property. This was official equipment. The divers checked the number against maintenance records. This time there was no debate. The serial number matched records tied to one submarine and one submarine only. It belonged to U-869. The mystery collapsed in an instant. The wreck off the coast of New Jersey was not unknown anymore. It was U-869, a German submarine officially listed as lost near Gibraltar. But that location was more than 3,000 miles away. The discovery did not bring relief. It brought a new shock. If this wreck was U-869, then history was wrong, not slightly wrong, completely wrong. The submarine did not sink where records claimed. Its final mission was not what reports said. And now, after decades of silence and death, that lie was beginning to crack. How did U-869 die? Once the wreck was confirmed as U-869, the question became unavoidable. How did a German submarine officially listed as lost near Gibraltar end up on the seafloor off New Jersey? As investigators looked closer, two main explanations emerged. The first theory came directly from the divers. Chatterton and Kohler had spent countless hours inside the wreck. They had touched the metal. They had studied the damage up close. What they saw did not look like a normal attack from the outside. Parts of the pressure hull appeared bent outward, as if the force came from within. One torpedo tube showed signs of failure and distortion. During World War I, German torpedoes were unreliable. Some torpedoes detonated too early. Others failed to arm.
Roberto has formed a team to investigate the identity of this boat. Aldo, Marco, and Gabrielle.
In the worst cases, they turned back toward the submarine that launched them. If a torpedo exploded near or inside the tube, the result would have been immediate and violent. If this happened aboard U-869, there would have been no warning, no time to react, no distress call, no chance to escape. The crew would have been killed in seconds, sealed inside steel as the submarine sank silently to the bottom. The idea was horrifying, but the physical damage seemed to support it. The second theory came from official American records. As files were declassified, a troubling detail surfaced. In February 1945, two United States Navy ships were operating near the same location as the wreck. The USS Howard D. Crowe and the USS Coiner reported making sonar contact with a suspected submarine. Both ships dropped depth charges. At the time, the Navy believed the attack had failed. There was no debris, no oil slick, no survivors. The incident was logged as a false alarm and forgotten. No submarine kill was recorded. Decades later, the timing and location matched almost exactly. Supporters of this theory argued that a direct hit was not required. A powerful underwater explosion could crush a submarine from nearby. Pressure waves could tear through the hull and kill everyone inside without leaving clear surface evidence. If U-869 was damaged and sank quickly, nothing would have risen to the surface to confirm the kill. This explanation was just as disturbing. It meant the submarine may have been destroyed by an attack that no one realized had succeeded. But none of these explanations answered the most troubling question of all. Why was U-869 operating in complete silence? No messages were logged. No patrol reports were filed. No signals were received. The submarine vanished without a trace while still on mission. The answer to that question would not come from the wreck itself. It would come from machines. the compartment no one knew existed. In early 2025, the story changed in a way no one expected. For decades, the wreck of U-869 had resisted every attempt to fully understand it. Divers had reached the limits of what the human body could endure. The submarine was too deep, too unstable, and too dangerous to explore completely. Entire sections remained sealed off by collapsed metal and crushed walls. Everyone believed that whatever answers were left were trapped beyond reach. Then technology caught up. A new team returned to the wreck with tools that did not exist when the first divers risked their lives. These were not traditional dives. Human presence was kept to a minimum. Instead, machines took the lead. AI-guided sonar systems scanned the wreck in fine detail. High-resolution underwater drones moved through tight spaces without fear or fatigue. Precision scanning tools mapped the submarine inch by inch, even in areas where a diver would be killed in minutes. The goal was clear and focused. They wanted to build a complete digital model of U-869. For weeks, the work was slow and tense. The wreck still resisted. Twisted metal blocked paths. Collapsed bulkheads hid empty spaces behind them. The scans revealed damage, decay, and destruction, but nothing that changed the story until the third week. During a routine scan near the forward crew quarters, a drone detected something that did not belong. Behind a section of collapsed metal, there was empty space. Not crushed, not flooded with debris. This space had never been entered. It had never appeared in diver reports. No one had ever mapped it. The scan showed that the compartment had been sealed shut during the submarine's final moments. The bulkheads were closed deliberately. Whatever was inside had been protected. The realization sent a shock through the team. Submarines only sealed compartments under extreme circumstances. A drone was carefully sent inside through a narrow opening. Its camera cut through decades of darkness. Inside the sealed space, the damage stopped. The walls were intact. The floor was clear. Then the camera found it. A rectangular container rested against the wall. It was undamaged, sealed, and its design was unmistakable. This was not a storage box for tools or supplies. It was watertight and reinforced. It was built to protect something critical. The discovery changed the atmosphere instantly. Every step after that was handled with extreme care. Weeks were spent planning the recovery. No risks were taken. The container was secured, stabilized, and slowly brought to the surface under controlled conditions. When the container was finally opened, the impact was immediate. What was inside did not just answer questions. It completely destroyed the accepted history of U-869. The mission that was never recorded. The documents found inside the sealed container were not random notes or loose papers. They followed a clear pattern. Anyone familiar with late-war German intelligence work would recognize it immediately. By late 1944 and early 1945, the leaders of Nazi Germany knew the war in Europe was lost. Allied forces were closing in from every direction. Cities were falling. Supply lines were collapsing. Victory was no longer possible. At that point, the focus shifted. The goal was no longer to win battles. The goal was to cause damage that would last after Germany fell. Disruption replaced conquest. Intelligence, sabotage, and long-term harm became the priority. Germany had tried this before. In 1942, German submarines carried agents to the United States during a mission known as Operation Pastorius. Saboteurs landed on Long Island and in Florida with orders to attack factories and infrastructure. That mission failed quickly. The agents were captured. Some were executed. But the operation proved something important. German submarines could reach the American coast, and they could deploy people there. The materials found aboard U-869 pointed to a similar plan, but one designed to avoid past mistakes. This time, there would be no loud attacks. No dramatic explosions meant to send messages. The plan was quiet and patient. The maps found inside the container were not decorative. They were functional. Rail bridges were marked only where multiple lines came together, places where a single strike could shut down transport across wide areas. Power stations were circled where failure would cause cascading blackouts. Tunnel points were highlighted, but not public entrances. These were maintenance corridors, air shafts, and service access points known only to workers. These were not invasion plans. They were plans to quietly break a city from the inside. The personnel files made the situation even darker. The names listed were not soldiers. They were civilians, German-born men and women who could pass easily as ordinary people. Some had lived outside Germany before the war. Others had vanished from official records in 1944 with no explanation. These were the kinds of individuals intelligence agencies preferred for silent operations. Some may have volunteered, others may not have had a choice. By that stage of the war, refusal was dangerous. Families could be threatened. Cooperation could be forced. These civilians were not commandos. They were people trained to disappear into daily life, to work normal jobs, to wait without drawing attention. They were not meant to fight. They were meant to survive quietly while carrying a terrible burden. That made them victims as well as tools. The encryption log tied everything together. It referenced Operation Stare, a program structured to leave almost no trace. It was compartmentalized, meaning each part knew very little about the others. It did not appear in standard naval records. It did not belong to the regular chain of command. That was intentional. If it failed, it could be denied. If it succeeded, it would remain invisible. A prepared radio message confirmed the stage of the mission. The phrase, "package delivered," appeared repeatedly. It did not refer to supplies or equipment. It referred to people. U-869 was not sent to fight Allied ships. It was not sent to hunt convoys. Its role was simple and terrifying. Carry agents across the Atlantic. Release them near the American coast. Leave without being seen. Never announce success. Never ask for rescue. Silence was part of the mission. That silence explained everything. No radio traffic, no patrol updates, no combat reports, no distress call. The submarine was meant to vanish from history the moment it completed its task. Either U-869 delivered those civilians and was destroyed on the way out, or it was killed before it could confirm success. Either way, the implication was chilling. The war did reach America in ways no one recorded. The blind spot that history missed. Once the true purpose of the mission became clear, the missing pieces in the historical record no longer felt accidental. They began to look deliberate. In early 1945, the United States coast was not as secure as people believed at the time. Public confidence was high, but reality was different. Radar coverage along parts of the East Coast was uneven. Some systems were outdated. Others were offline for maintenance. Anti-submarine patrols were stretched thin. Aircraft and ships had been reassigned as the war's focus shifted to the Pacific. The Atlantic was treated as a solved problem. That belief created a dangerous blind spot. When investigators looked back with this new understanding, old civilian reports took on new meaning. For years, these reports had been ignored, dismissed, or filed away as mistakes. Now they began to line up with the known timeline of U-869. Fishermen along the New Jersey coast had reported strange lights offshore late at night. The lights did not move like commercial ships. They appeared briefly, then vanished. At the time, officials assumed they were distant vessels or simple misidentifications. No action was taken. Local police logs told a similar story. Officers recorded unexplained footprints on restricted beach areas during blackout hours. These were not tourists. These were not patrols. The footprints appeared and disappeared without explanation. With no suspects and no visible damage, the reports went nowhere. At the time, none of this raised alarms. There were no explosions, no arrests, no clear acts of war. Without obvious damage, there was nothing to investigate. That is how sabotage works. Sabotage is not meant to announce itself. It avoids noise. It avoids attention. Its success is measured by confusion, delays, and uncertainty. When done correctly, it looks like nothing at all. The lack of evidence was not proof that nothing happened. It was proof that the operation worked as designed. If U-869 was operating under intelligence command instead of standard naval command, its disappearance would have followed a different path. Intelligence missions do not generate the same paperwork. They are separated from normal reporting chains. When something goes wrong, the response is often silence. Failures are buried, especially when a war is ending. By the spring of 1945, Germany collapsed within weeks. Allied priorities shifted overnight. Attention moved to rebuilding, occupation, and the next global order. No one had reason to reopen quiet files tied to missions that were never officially acknowledged. Documents were misplaced, some were destroyed, others were classified and forgotten. That explains why U-869 was officially listed as lost near Gibraltar. That location closed the story cleanly. It kept the submarine far from American waters. It avoided uncomfortable questions. It removed the need for a search. It also explains why no one came looking for the wreck. U-869 was not just a lost submarine. It was a problem. A submarine connected to an unrecorded intelligence mission, operating off the American coast, and possibly deploying civilians into the population, would have raised serious questions in 1945. Questions about coastal security. Questions about intelligence failures. Questions about what may have gone undetected. Those were questions no one wanted to face at the end of a war. Silence was easier. And that raised a final, unsettling concern. If one U-boat carried a mission like this, then the idea that it was the only one becomes harder to accept. Intelligence programs are rarely isolated. They are built in groups. They rely on repetition. U-869 may not have been unique. It may have been one of several attempts that were never meant to be recorded.